with a sculpture that I am currently working on. This was a piece that the upper panel piece here had been carved and crafted, sculpted, whatever, a while ago. This is not, a lot of these sculptures I don't actually fix on the base. I set them free standing so they can pivot, whatnot, right? Like, so you can see kind of what's going on here. And this piece was, like I said, sculpted, I don't know, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. Man, I don't even remember at this point. It's been a while. And it is out of green ash. So not green as in not dried, but green as in the variety of ash. Um, Pretty hard wood on the Janka scale, which the Janka scale is a measurement, if you're not familiar with that term, of wood densities and strengths. It basically measures how far, if I remember all the details correctly, how far a 1 inch diameter steel bearing can be pressed into wood, how deep, with a certain amount of pressure, maybe 10,000 pounds or something. I don't remember. But it's the indicating scale of what hardness a wood has, right? So ash is pretty hard. And well, not all ashes, they all vary, but this one is well up into the 2000 range of the Janka scale, which is pretty hard. To give you an idea, most pines are only in like the 5 to 6, maybe 800 range. There are a couple that reach the 1200 range, but not nearly as many. And so that's what I've been working with here. This, I will have a full process video on this coming up pretty soon on the channel. I'm trying to do a lot more of those. I've got a lot of wood and sculptures I'm going to be making. Um, Not even for sale. I'm making them because I've had all this wood for such a time. I do landscape maintenance for the golf courses in the summer and spring and fall. So I have a few months off and I want to get as much of this as I can done. And so in this particular process, I used the Arbortech, which I have right here. I used the Arbortech turbo plane, and I like this plane pretty well. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect. There's some details about it that we can go over more in detail. A couple of things, if you're looking at getting one, just know has limited bite on the side here. So if you want to try to get a narrow channel, then it's going to be harder because it's going to rub here and it's going to burn the wood on the smooth metal side. It chatters kind of bad in less dense fiber. So in like walnut, it would do better because that's a very dense fiber. Ash is pretty dense, but not nearly as dense as walnut. So it does chatter a little bit more. If you go the wrong direction, it can get tear out. So be careful with that. Of course, planing green wood, like wet wood, would be easier. That or using the turbo plane on the green wood would be easier than it is on like dry wood, like this is. Um, and also, it's very fatiguing on your arms. I lost the handle to this. Handles are your friends, but also make sure that you're wearing gloves and an apron or a thick shirt. Like this is a welding shirt, so it's like a flame-proof shirt. It's a flannel that was like $150 or whatever because it's a construction grade shirt. Because it throws a lot of chips and they kind of hurt if you're getting into drier wood that might chip off or whatever, right? So I used this to give these textures here. Let me see. Can you guys see those textures all right? Just trying to make sure. I don't think anybody has commented yet. So I'm trying to just make sure I'm not missing anything. Um, so yeah, these textures I created with this, right? Just stippling. These grooves here that look like gouge grooves I created with this. So this. Back when I first sculpted this piece, this was already here. I made this. And I also used the Arbortech. Um, so my sculptures are a little weird. I know that. A lot of people don't understand them, and that's fine. So I didn't want to flatten this because I didn't want it flat. I like the juxtaposition of angles and things. So I drilled into this not straight, and I drilled into this not straight, which makes it kind of straight when you have it this way. Now, as you'll see, when I rotate it, the angles start to change, right? So know that when I'm rotating this, I'm showing you textures. I mean, if you like it at a specific angle, like down like that more, you can do that. That's fine. That's I don't make these fixed. I leave them so that they rotate, so that people can basically experiment with the way they want to see my sculpture, or that they can present it in a way that they want to show whatever side with whatever side of this wood here. So, like these textures I also made with that Arbortech, right? These grooves I made with it, and then I textured this groove here with it. And then this one here, I made the initial grooves with the Arbortech, but then I used this is just a cheap, so when I used to do tree work, they sent me this. It's called Easy Do. It is a rotary tool, right? Like a Dremel. It came with chainsaw sharpening stuff, which I still use. It's just a cheap brand. It actually works pretty well. So if you're looking for an affordable version of a what's it called, Dremel, this might be it. Now I have had this one for a few years, so I don't know what quality's like on these today. Just keep that in mind. But I am using the Kutzall burr, and that burr I went back and re-ground in to get these grooves, right? So that's why there's those depths and undulations. It's just simply because I used this tool. And then these little gouges here I made also with this tool. And then also these small stipplings I made with this and these lines here. Now, I do like 4 or 5 kinds of sculpting quite a bit. And those are like my basic styles that I continually go to. And this is one of my more, I guess, primitive styles, right? Is what I would call it, and what a few people have called it. Had some in some smaller galleries and whatnot, and that's kind of what they tend to promote it as, is primitive style, or primitive modern, maybe, or modern primitive, however you want to call it. And so I don't do as much in these to get the texture of the tooling out. I do sand them and do some things to try to, you know, refine them a little bit, but I'm not going to do as much on this one as I would on this sculpture here, which is much more geometric and much more modern in its design, right? So this one gets like up to 400 or 600 grit sanding and a bunch of tooling work and whatever, trying to make it not perfect, because I don't really buy into the whole perfect sculpture thing, but it gets close to, you know, what I would consider perfect, with getting rid of the tooling and whatnot and whatnot. So this one you can see more of the texture in it, and that's just how I like it, right? So kind of keep that in mind, that each sculpture that you create can have the feel that you want with it. And it's just about finding the right audience. And to be honest, it's hard to find the right audience. I've had pieces in different things, shows, galleries, and haven't really found it yet. Hopefully I will. Maybe you guys can help me find it. That would be awesome. But the key here is to just go with what is natural and what looks right to you, because it's your art, right? So that's why some of these are not quite, this isn't quite as refined. You can see some of the sanding lines in this. I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but there's some sanding lines in this, and in this one there's not going to be, in the one behind it, right? But one of the tools I also use um, to get in these grooves is this. This is a nylon brush. So do know that if you use this in like a Dremel, for instance, it will melt, and you'll have black rubber melted or plastic melted all over your piece. Don't, if it's a hardwood, don't do that. Use it in a drill. That's what it's intended for. Um, and I did that, and I used it on a drill, a high-speed drill, to get in all these little textures and grooves that are harder to get into, right? And it does a fair job of getting those, like all the rough crap off of them. That's the important part. But it does leave lines in some of the areas, and if you go across the grain, it's going to leave a line more aggressively than if you go with the grain, of course. So kind of keep in mind the orientation of your drill, whatever. Um, and this one, because it's been, so I don't kiln dry my stuff. I let it lay out in the fields or in the yard and dry, and it checks and it cracks and it whatever's, and that's just my style. I like that. I have access to kilns and things, but it's not worth it to me, in my opinion, to kiln dry. Plus, I've talked about this in a video on my other YouTube channel, which is Eric Jem Andes. That's EricJemandes. If you want to check it out, and I talk about the difference between kiln drying and you know, just natural drying, and then also I talk about the difference of or the realities of getting blocks of wood dry. Okay, so technically, there are ways. There's like I've heard of these infrared, um, what's it called? Uh, Man, what are those things called? Kilns, infrared kilns that can evidently penetrate wood and dry from the center out and whatever, and that's great. They're very expensive, very expensive. So you'd have to be paying quite a bit per hour to use them. Most standard kilns that lumber yards and places are going to have, even nice ones, won't be able to dry something that's over like 3 inches effectively or efficiently, I should say. It would take months, maybe a year or more to try to dry something like that. You would still get checking in it, and it would also be crazy expensive because they couldn't put any other wood in there. So you would have somebody's kiln dried or tied up for a long, long time. So most blocks of wood that you're going to sculpt with, if you're going to do it out of a solid form of wood, will not be dry, and it probably never will be dry in most of our lifetimes. Some of them could dry out by 20 years or so, but it depends on the wood and the size and things like that. The sculptures you see online that are dry, one of my favorite sculptors who does dry wood sculpting in block form is Joe Escalona. I'll probably talk about him in another episode at some point. Really cool totem sculptures that he does, not totems as in like indigenous, but totems as in forms stacked on top of each other. But what he's doing, it seems, from what I can tell and what I've seen, he's buying boards that are 2 inches thick, planing, jointing, gluing them together to make a block. And that's because a 2 inch board is a pretty average thickness of wood that you can, a 2 inch thick board that you can have kiln dried pretty accessibly and for a relatively reasonable cost, right? That all being said, you're still dealing with the cost per board foot. And like he's using a lot of walnut and rosewood, and those are somewhere between, you know, I think he's in Spain, so I don't know what their costs are, but in the States, most of those are going to be somewhere between $14 and $30 a board foot. And that's 1 inch by 12 inch by 12 inches a board foot if you're not familiar. So 2 inches thick, that alone is now, if it's 30, it's $60 a board foot. Or I mean, not a board foot, but for a 2 inch piece. And he's doing multiples together, right? So it gets really expensive really quick, just so you know. And I don't have that kind of pocket money. And I'm not famous enough for my sculptures to make that happen yet. And I don't know that I would if I could. I like the textures that come with the checking and the cracking. You can fill with epoxy. I'm not a big guy on epoxies, just so you know. So most of my stuff will always have some kind of checking and cracking. With time, it will continue to check and crack a little bit. But if it's inside, it's going to do that way less because it's a controlled environment. If it's outside, and most of my sculptures can be put outside, If it's oiled regularly, that's going to mitigate a lot of that. Oils help keep UV from sucking too much, excuse me, UV from sucking too much moisture out, and keeps moisture from settling in. So when you get snow on it or whatever, rain, it runs off if it's oiled regularly and thoroughly. You can even, you know, soak these in oil if you wanted to give that appearance. To keep them oiled. So this one will have wax on it when I'm done with it, and that's what I've got to do next. I will actually be waxing this on my video. So once again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you find this stuff interesting, I will be doing process videos. I'm getting so many. I'm going to be doing multiples per week right now. I think. Um, my current goal, and this is just a goal. I don't know if I'll accomplish it, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to sculpt 30 sculptures by the end of February. And if I get more done, fine. If I don't, well, that's life. But 30 sculptures by the end of February 2026 is my goal. So if you guys want to see the process and the progress, come along. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe. It would really help me out. I don't have enough to monetize this channel yet, but if I can get some more watch hours and subscribers, that would help. And if you ever feel like it, and I don't expect it, but if you ever feel like making a tip or a donation to me, that would be great because that'll help me just continue to replenish all the tools and consumables that I'm wearing out. And these hardwoods, that is one thing I guess not enough people talk about. Hard, dense woods, which are often your best woods to use for sculpting, are very hard on tools. Just so you know. So keep that in mind. It's something that if you're doing this, you have to like basically have in mind that you're going to be replacing tools. And so sculpting's not cheap. It's not, but it becomes more affordable once you have your tool set together, and if you can get access to woods. And that's why I use a lot of woods that I do use. We'll talk about a lot of this stuff in the future more in depth, but I use a lot of local woods that aren't as famous woods. They're not considered as high quality, but I think they're overlooked woods. Like I use silver poplar quite a bit. I use cottonwood, like big leaf cottonwood, some narrow leaf cottonwood. Russian olive is a beautiful wood. Um, Green ash like this, or swamp ash, velvet ash. I've heard it called different things. And then Siberian elm is a beautiful wood. And so those I can get pretty quickly and easily. So I do that. And thank you for the subscription. Somebody just subscribed to my channel. Don't forget to hit those on that bell notification. Hit the all notification so you don't miss. I'm putting out lots of shorts too, just so you guys know. And keep an eye on what I'm doing. And this one will actually be finished. I don't know if today, because it's already noon, but it will be finished in the next day or two, and I will have the video up and I will show you guys. I might even do a live with this one when it's done so you guys can see it and just see what it turned into from where it's at now. Where you're going to notice the biggest difference is probably going to be in the base right here, because that hasn't been finished at all. All I've done is drilled a hole, and that hole was super hard to drill because this ash it's actually frozen, which is not ideal. My drill did not like that, and I have a decent drill, but it didn't like that. And also it was a 7/8 inch hole. And while typically you step up hole sizes, bear with me, I gotta step in front of the camera. Oh, I gotta go around. While oftentimes you step up bits, when you're using an auger bit, you can't do that, because if you try to do that, then it needs the center point on solid wood. You can't like put a larger one just over the hole of what was already there easily, I should say. So when you're using these kinds of augers to drill the bigger holes, which are more affordable and work well for especially hardwoods, the reality of it is that you have to kind of just drill it all in one go, right? So make sure your if you want your rod in or your bolts in straight, you drill it straight. Um, and that helps, right? So this is what I used on. Well, actually, I did not. I used this one here. Um, so do you guys have any questions for me while I'm here? I don't know what's going on. My camera is trying to do something for me. Um, that didn't go as I planned. Sorry about that. Do you guys have any questions about anything I'm doing or using? If you do, leave a comment. I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, I get it. That's fine. I just appreciate you guys stopping by and checking out. Once again, please, if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel if you find this interesting. Got a lot of sculptures that I've been working on. Just trying to get some of these done. And of course, I'm sculpting outside, so weather's a factor as well. Because even though technically a lot of stuff you can sculpt when it's wet, it's not the easiest or the best if it's, especially for the tools, like if it's raining actively or snowing, it's not the best. So I have to be more cautious about that. But thanks for stopping by and checking out this live. I haven't done a live in a long time. So it's been fun. Hopefully, you guys like the work that I'm putting out. If you want to follow my Instagrams, you can do that as well. I will link those in the description of this video after this video is posted to my YouTube channel. And yeah, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.